This was all the context that I knew of in regards to Robin before I started watching One Piece. I knew nothing else about her than those 4 simple words. To think that those words can mean and have so much of an emotional impact on me much later on in the series is just really surreal to think about. I knew of it, but had no idea what it truly represented and the significance it had. Robin is a character that is held near and dear to my heart. There's just a plethora of things to love about her for me. Her personality, the dark sense of humor she has, the sheer mystery of her past, what she went through, and the subtle things Oda has planted in the series is something that I want to discuss and share with you all. For over 5+ years, the manga and anime has hinted and teased us of her past, and the foreshadowing done here is just amazing and something truly to behold. I'm here to explain to you in this 8-part series showcasing Robin as a character and just the arc that she has gone through thus far, and just how much she's changed over the years and for the better. Here's what each part will contain and cover. Part 1 will be covering her introduction scene of Whiskey Peak all the way to the Alabasta arc. Part 2 will focus on the Giant Skypiea arc. Part 3 I will discuss the Long Ring Longland arc to Water 7. Part 4 will have me covering Enies Lobby and the post Enies Lobby arc, as that arc will need its own video for all the information in it. Part 5 features Thriller Bark to the end of the pre-time skip. Part 6 includes the return to Saba Odi, aka the beginning of the post-time skip, all the way to the end of the Punk Hazard arc. Part 7 will cover Dressrosa and Zoe, and Part 8 will solely focus on Wano as it's the current ongoing arc. What I'll be omitting from this video series are filler arcs as a whole, just because it isn't part of the main story. At points during this, it'll definitely sound like I'm narrating a lot of arcs, especially her key arc later on like Water 7 and Enies Lobby, but it's important to know exactly what is going on to understand it completely. To know the full story of Nico Robin, we must go from the beginning to her introductory scene. The first ever time we see Robin is her blowing up Ingram's ship, who is on his way to Alabasta to tell the kingdom about Crocodile's plan, along with his identity. Ingram set himself up on a ship because he knew Baroque Works would be after him for knowing of all this, so he used himself as a decoy. This plan fell apart because it was destroyed by Miss All-Sunday, aka Robin, but this was not known at the time. This scene already sets the tone to come that Baroque Works are no joke, considering earlier in the arc, we saw the other lower numbers of their crew being weaklings and swatted aside fairly easily. Early in the arc, Vivi explains why she joined Baroque Works, and it's for the same reasons as stated before about Ingram joining it. In order to do this, Vivi spied on Miss All-Sunday, because she's the only one in Baroque Works who has seen the boss and knows of his plans. We then see Miss All-Sunday up on the Straw Hat ship, saying to be careful on the rocks, and that she's happy that they escaped. The tone and how it's delivered makes it very unclear if she sincerely means it in her being happy that they escaped or not. Everyone is shocked by her being there. She then says that she saw Mr. 8 on that ship earlier. Vivi asks if she killed Ingram, but she never replies back to her on Vivi's question. We learn that she purposely let Vivi spy on her, and then she told the boss that Vivi knew of his identity. Miss All-Sunday went along with Vivi's plan because she found it pathetic and rather ridiculous that she planned to make enemies with the Baroque Works and to save Alabasta. This is our first taste of Robin's dark sense of humor, as she just took it as humorous and played along with it for a bit. She then easily disarms the crew, and she says not to worry, she's not on an assignment, and she has no reason to fight them. She takes Luffy's hat and puts it on her head as she remarks on how this is the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Her interest in Luffy is much more hinted at here, and we get a clearer idea on this much later on in the series. She says what bad luck they have for having a girl on board that Baroque Works wants dead, and that she's being protected by a small number of pirates. She says that the worst luck of it all is where their log post is heading them towards. Robin then states how their next island on Nami's log post is Little Garden, and even if they do nothing to stop them now, they won't make it to Alabasta. They'll be annihilated if they go there. Luffy replies with saying that he doesn't care and he wants his hat back, as Usopp calls her a moron. She says, "Are you a little kid? Rushing towards a place where you'll die. Doesn't that sound awfully foolish?" She then gives Luffy his hat back and Vivi an eternal log post that will veer them away from Little Garden to an island that is literally translated as nothing, and no one at Baroque Works knows of this location, so they can't track them there. Nami is confused by her actions and wonders why she's helping, and then Zoro thinks of it as a trap, and Robin says who knows. Vivi wonders if she should use this log pose, as it may give them their safest route. Luffy then takes the log pose and says who gives a crap about that and breaks it. Nami berates him on saying what if she was trying to help us. Luffy says that she's not the one deciding where they'll go, and that he doesn't trust her as she blew up Ingram's ship, and he hates her. Robin says that it's too bad that he did that, and she says that she doesn't hate those with high spirits. If they survive, they'll meet again. Luffy says no, and she does a very small chuckle and leaves. There's a lot to take from this scene. Luffy right off the bat does not trust her at all, and for good reason at this point in time. Her motives are not very clear and conflicting, as she was willing to blow up Ingram's ship, but also help the crew that Baroque Works wants in capturing Vivi. Most likely she blew up the ship because she was given an order to do so, but it still doesn't clearly explain why she would help the Straw Hats here. At this point in time, I have to remind you. But in regards to all this questioning and everything regarding Robin and her motives and what she wants and why she's doing these things, will be much sorted out later on in the story, and it gets a lot clearer. We do learn at the end of the Little Garden arc that it's confirmed that this island that Robin was leading them towards was a real thing, as stated by Brogy. Now granted, she was heading them to an island that was literally shit, but it was much more safer than Little Garden. So Robin indeed was guiding them to a real island after all, and was not lying to them, nor was she setting them up into a trap. In this moment, it does show that when she's not ordered to assassinate anyone, she has no real reason to fight or kill anyone. So she certainly isn't bloodlusted or pure evil, like we first may have thought, which does make it very clear that her intentions were good-hearted. So now we can say without a shadow of a doubt, she was being honest in every word that she said to them about her intentions and giving them that log pose. And it does seem to me like at the very least she's giving them a chance to get away from Alabasta and the overall area unharmed. It's just another subtle and interesting thing to take consideration with Robin here, and we'll see much more of this when we get into the Alabasta arc. At the end of the Drum Island arc, we catch a glimpse of Robin in the Baroque Works headquarters room, as Crocodile is annoyed of pirates running around Alabasta and wonders if they know that he's in this country. Robin replies with saying who knows, but this island is in the middle of a rebellion and it attracts pirates. She asks him if he's going now, and he says to her that he has to fulfill his public duty after all, to which Robin says what a nice person you are. He states that of course, the Shippuden are pirates who defeat other pirates, and they are heroes of the people. What we can take away from this scene is that Robin makes no attempts to stop him, and she goes along with what he'll end up doing, which is most likely killing the pirates that are in Alabasta. At this moment, she's a pretty typical right-hand man next to the boss, but there's a lot more to this than meets the eye as we go on through this arc. In the Alabasta arc, we see Robin taking orders from Crocodile and doing exactly as she's told, which again confirms that what she said to the Straw Hats on their ship is right, and that when she is under no orders to attack people, she won't. And it's a good reminder too, because it's been a while since we last saw her. As Robin encounters Vivi, she tries to attack her because obviously she killed Ingram, so she's trying to get revenge, but stops her. Robin then seemingly stabs her as Pell loses it and attacks her. They have a brief fight and she easily defeats him. Pell asks Vivi if she's injured, to which Robin replies with, "Did it look like I impaled her?" He asks her what did she do, and she says no need to get worked up. She was having a little bit of fun. We get a reveal of her Devil Fruit ability of the Hana Hana no Mi, which is a Devil Fruit that gives her the power to make any part of her body blossom, like a flower. She can make her limbs sprout everywhere. Pell then tries to get revenge for Ingram for what she did, but she knocks him out. It then takes Vivi to the boss as he's waiting for her, and so is your friends. This whole scene shows that once more she's following orders, but not killing anyone, which is something to note. And we see her dark sense of humor once more playing a joke on Pell to make him think she stabbed her, just to rile him up. And most likely she wanted to fight Pell because she seemed rather interested if Pell was stronger than her, so she wanted to test her strength against him. And he was also one of Alabasta's royal guards as well. Once the Straw Hats are locked in a cage, Robin does nothing to help them as she continues to follow orders as Crocodile explains what will happen to them as Robin looks unhappy about it. Before they leave the room that is filling up with water, she looks back at the room. Another nice subtle hint that maybe she feels bad for them. As they are leaving the room, Sanji calls Crocodile and Robin picks it up and hands it to him. Robin for sure knows of the voice as she's seen him before and heard his voice. She for sure must think that this is a lie that Sanji's kind of cooking up here, but she doesn't question it. She just kind of completely plays along with it and plays dumb. Once again, she's kind of hiding something from Crocodile in some way. When they come out of the casino, they see a bunch of knocked out people and learns about it being Mr. Prince that did it. When he sees someone who he thinks is this Mr. Prince person running away from the area, he intends to go after him. With a smirk on Robin's face, she says, "Why don't you let him go?" The smirk, I'm sure, is that she knows Crocodile won't do that, but she tries anyways. She likely thinks that it's Sanji there, but it was actually Chopper, but she had no idea who that was and she never met him yet. In Sanji's flashback, we see how he did all this outside the casino as we see Robin look back at it as it cuts to Sanji walking in. Did Robin know? Did she purposely ignore this? Maybe. These little hints of her in these moments tell a lot, and I absolutely love it, and we're not even halfway through this arc yet. We also learn something from Smoker inside the cage that Robin has been followed by the government for over 20 years with over 70 million bounty to her name. Which is nice because we learned something about her and it's hinted here, and it won't be fully realized until like 200 chapters from then on how that bounty truly came to be. After the Straw Hats escape the cage, Luffy confronts Crocodile and Robin. He says to Luffy that he's abandoned hundreds of people like him that become close with other people, and he tells him that he's pretty stupid. Robin does a slight chuckle to Luffy's remark, and he gets mad, willing to kill her for it. This is where we know of Miss All-Sunday's true name, which is something Robin doesn't want to even be remembered of, considering how she told Crocodile that she didn't want it mentioned. She leaves him and goes back to Alberna. After Crocodile defeats Luffy and leaves, Robin comes back to save him from the quicksand pit. Robin seemed to avoid Crocodile because he never mentions that he saved him, he just assumes he somehow escaped when we see a scene later on in the arc. Robin at this point, without a shadow of a doubt, is interested in Luffy and his fighting spirit, along with the D in his name, the Will of D, since those were her two questions to Luffy after she saves him. She thinks to herself, "What are you people?" referring to the Will of D, something we'll see later on with Saul, as it's the only person that she knew that had the D initial in his name. Pell has followed Robin out to where Luffy was, and she tells him to save the boy lying over there, and that he's the one that brought Vivi all the way here, and that she's safe heading to Alberna. Which also confirms that Robin lied to Crocodile on where she was truly headed, as she actually went back to where Pell was at, which was at the rain base, and lured him out of the area to have him follow her to where Luffy was at so he can tend to his wound. She may have also heard him scream out that he wanted meat, so that is another possibility too. Before she leaves, she mentions she's unsure of what will happen, but the circumstances are what they are, in regards to Vivi's situation. So again, it's reinstated that she cares for Vivi in some way, shape, or form, at the very least. When Crocodile and Robin reach the palace, he talks about knowing where the Pluton is, and mentions it being his main goal as it's a super weapon to blow up nations. It then pans to Robin in a saddened look, which will paint a very clear picture as we go onward, but once again, just more subtle hints to keep in mind. When Luffy lands a punch on Crocodile, Robin smiles and does a little laughing chuckle. Then he explains his weakness, which is water, and that he noticed it when he stabbed him. So this tells us here the reason why Robin chuckled is because she was aware that Luffy knows of his weakness, just like she does, and we'll see this much later on in the arc. When Cobra asks who is he, Robin explains to him that he's a pirate and Vivi has narrowly escaped death again, and Cobra figures it out that he's the one that brought Vivi back to Alabasta. Now notice how she doesn't insult Luffy here or anything, she just merely states the facts. And she certainly didn't have to tell him all that. The fact that she just didn't say, "a pirate," means, at least to me, she sees him more than just that. When she sees Luffy drink a bunch of water and him inflating like a balloon, she genuinely laughs, which is the first time in the series we see this side of her. It could be just of how silly the situation is, or she just found it funny, I don't know. After Luffy lands some successful punches to Crocodile, Robin and him stare at each other, and it's the first time they met after her saving him from the quicksand pit. She then says to him that his luck has run out, and that he's out of time. We then see what she means by that as Crocodile tells her to leave, and then he uses his right hand to disintegrate the ground into sand. This is just more things to take note on, and just how Robin knows of his abilities, as well as knowing his weakness against water. As Cobra is taking her to the Poneglyph, even he is aware of Robin, considering of her wanted poster, and that she's infamous around the world, and wonders why she's here now. By this small interaction, Robin again shows no care about her name and wanting to disassociate herself from it. She doesn't answer his other question as she replies with saying all he had to do is take me to the Poneglyph. She's then stopped by Tashi and her men. He tells her it's dangerous to be here and says to her that she's in a hurry. Tashi tells her that an injured soldier told her about what happened in Alberna, and asks if she knows who the person is that she's escorting. Robin tells her that it doesn't matter who it is, as she hates government people. She threatens her that she will not pass, and she tells her that she'll have to die then. One soldier is about to say who she is, and the soldiers are about to open fire. She says don't get in my way and strangles them. She tells her again that she's in a hurry and don't anger her any further. Then a soldier gets an old wanted poster for her that Smoker asked him to get, and it says that 20 years ago she had a worldwide famous bounty placed on her. The news article mentioned the incident where 6 Marine battleships were sunk by an 8-year-old girl. The government proclaimed her as a first-class threat, and placed a 79 million berry bounty on her. After that, she disappeared without trace. She then interrupts him by saying, "Quit your blabbering," and she asks to pass again, or do they all want to die? Tashi tries to stop her, but Robin again tells her that she wants no one to get in her way, as she puts a sword to her throat. This entire scene is just loaded with subtle things to mention. First off, it is really clear, for the first time Robin shows great emotion and eagerness to see this Poneglyph, even willing to kill them if they get in her way. Now granted, there's a time limit with the bomb that's about to go off in Alabasta, so there's a reason for her urgent nature, but what we know of her later on, it's clear she has a passion for finding Poneglyphs. We've never seen her be so loud and aggressive on doing something, but never have we seen her display such emotion like this. In this scene as well, she also mentions that she hates anyone involved with the government. A small line here, but it gets fleshed out many years down the line, and it's another bit of foreshadowing to her character. When the soldier talks about her wanted poster, she cuts them off before he can finish, and what we know of her down the line, it's likely because that she doesn't like to be reminded of it, as it's a horrific past. And she doesn't like to be reminded of that because she's been running from the government for so many years, and they're slowly getting a lead on her, and obviously she doesn't like that. And again, with her name being mentioned here, she just doesn't care. Even them mentioning her blowing up 6 ships when she was 8 appears to be true, as the first time we ever see her is blowing up Ingram's ship. On their way to the Poneglyph, Robin tells Cobra that she can read them, and it's why Crocodile agreed to cooperate with her, and that's why he won't kill her. She believes the location of the Pluton may be inscribed on that Poneglyph. Cobra tells her that for generations, the Alabasta royal family has carried on its responsibility of protecting it. She replies with saying, "Don't make me laugh." I'm mentioning this here because it's a subtle line, and with her response, it's very vague and mysterious in a way. But I'll expand on this come Annie's lobby. It's just something to keep in mind. When they reach the Poneglyph, we notice Robin to be genuinely excited to see it, which is again a first for her, as we've never seen her be so happy to see something. Her comment on saying "you were telling the truth" is to when Cobra was saying the location of the Poneglyph was being past that door. We cut back to Tashi as she's barely alive as we go into a flashback, as she still continues to try and fight Robin. She then breaks her leg and tries to go by her, but she stops her. Robin says to her, "How many times must you face me until you're satisfied?" as she then chokes her. The big thing to take away from this scene is with all her talk about killing her was just a bluff. She doesn't want to kill. Again, these are more things to show her not being such a pure bloodlusted character, and just a mere total opposite to Crocodile. As Crocodile finds the underground layer, he asks Robin if this is the Poneglyph. Instead of replying to him right away on that, she says to him, "That was quick," which meant that to her she believes Luffy lost the fight, and he took care of him fast. But she visibly looks upset by this based on the shadow covering her eyes and the expression given by her. Based on that little scene, it does seem like she in some way wanted Luffy to win, is my assumption. He then tells her to read a Poneglyph, and she does. She ends up reading to him the history of the kingdom, but to him he's not interested in that. He asks where's the Pluton. She says it doesn't say. All that's written here is the country's history. Not a single word about the Pluton is described here. After hearing of this, he says to her that she's been a beneficial partner, but he's decided to kill her here. She's shocked to hear this, while Crocodile says the pact they made 4 years ago is now fulfilled. On that day she told him if she took him to the Poneglyph, she would give him the location of the weapon. During her 4 years she spent in Baruch Works, her intellect and command had been exemplary, and that was enough for him. She was a useful woman to keep on hand. However, in the end, she has gone against her word. He goes to stab her but barely misses, only hitting her hat. He goes on to say that this country's Poneglyph contains not one word relating to the Pluton's location, or is it? That even if it was inscribed here, she had no intention of telling him. But he feels no anger towards her, and asks, "Do you know why?" She then calls him a fool. She worked with him for 4 years. She always known that he would do this. She has a tube of water ready to throw at him, which once more shows how well prepared she is for him and knows of his weakness. She ends up missing, and then gets stabbed. He says to her that he forgives her for everything, because he never trusted anyone from the very start. She then falls to the ground. He says that given by Cobra's reaction to the word, he knows that the Pluton does in fact exist. This entire scene here again is just very important as to what Crocodile said about not trusting people, and it does relate to Robin's past and her fears. I won't go into it in full detail here, but it's just something to keep in mind for later on down the line when we get to part 2 of this video series. The layer begins to rumble, and it turns out Cobra removed a pillar that activates a trap that forces the chamber to collapse. It's his last resort to trapping him and Robin inside, as it falls apart. So now not only is the kingdom of Alabasta on a timer for its explosion, the chamber is as well. As Luffy arrives to the underground layer, Robin notices him and says Straw Hat. Just as the bomb is about to go off, we see shots of all the other people's reactions to it. And take note how Robin has her head down here, when before it's clear that she's awake. In that moment there, she likely has given up all hope and is accepting death. Obviously this doesn't happen as Pell sacrifices himself to get the bomb to explode away from the kingdom. After Luffy defeats Crocodile, we see Cobra carrying Luffy, and he says that Luffy got the two of them out of there, and he received the antidote. Now he says two, so that implies Luffy carried Cobra and Robin out of there at least. But how did he get the antidote for the hook poison? A few episodes later, after the crew heals up from their injuries sustained in the arc, they leave the island. Then out of nowhere, Robin is on a ship saying that they finally got away from that island and saying well done. All of them are shocked to see her, and immediately Zoro says that she's here for revenge, and Nami asks why is she here, while Usopp says to take cover. Chopper doesn't even know who she is, but Sanji says he doesn't care as she's a beautiful lady. She walks up to Zoro and easily disarms him and Nami. She says don't point those dangerous things at her, and that she told them this before, referring to their first encounter in Whiskey Peak. Nami asks how long has she been on the ship, and Robin says the entire time, which most likely means that during the crew's time recovering from their injuries, she must have been hiding out on that ship for the past 3 days at the very least. She tells Nami she's borrowing her clothes, and she gets upset at that. She then looks at Luffy and says his full name. She says, "You aren't forgetting what you did to me, are you?" Luffy says don't lie, he didn't do anything. She says yes you did. She says that you put her through some very excruciating treatment, and now he has to take responsibility. Luffy doesn't know what she's talking about, and what do you want him to do? She answers with, "Allow me to join your Nakama." Nearly all of them are shocked by what she just said, and then we go into a flashback. We learn how Luffy, Cobra, and Robin got out of the underground lair, and we see how Luffy survived the hook poison when Crocodile hit him with it. Robin had an antidote for it, which once more shows how well prepared and knowledgeable she was about him. She says even if he's buried beneath all this rubble, his rubber body may allow him to survive. Cobra asks, why'd you lie to Crocodile? The history of your country is not inscribed on it. All that is on there are the details about the weapon her organization desired, and of its location. If she translated it to him, the country would currently be his. She says she's not interested. She doesn't care whether people or countries live or die. She couldn't care less. She never intended to give Crocodile the weapon in the first place. Cobra then says to her, then why did you come here? She states that hopes and expectations are two different things. What she wanted to find was the real Poneglyph. Out of all the Poneglyphs existing in the world, it is the one stone that tells the true history. He asks her what does it mean. She says it doesn't matter. She searched for it for 20 years and this was the only lead she found. This place was her last hope and it was a failure. She has nothing to live for. She may as well die here. She was tired of this life. All she wanted was to know the true history. But too many enemies and obstacles stood between her and her dream, as tears run down her face. After Luffy wakes up from being treated with the antidote, he picks Cobra and Robin up. She tells him to stop. She has no reason to live and to put her down and leave. He replies with saying why should he listen to her as the flashback ends. There's a lot to unpack with this flashback scene here, so let's break it down. First off, when she says that she's not interested after what Cobra had said about that had she have told him about the Pluton on the Poneglyph to Crocodile, the country would currently be his. That does confirm that after all this time, she wasn't pursuing that Poneglyph for a very pure evil world domination like goal, as we may have thought early on. Nor does she care about the Pluton. So at any point when Crocodile mentions about the Pluton or Robin looking upset, it is now confirmed that she hates this idea and does not like it at all. When she says she doesn't care about whether people or countries die, it's a bit of a contradiction on her part. She saved Luffy twice in this arc with the quicksand pit and the hook poison antidote. So at the very least she cares about him enough to help him out and save his life. And in regards to countries dying, her not giving Crocodile the Pluton details is still a noble deed to the country of Alabasta, no matter her intention. When she said that she never intended to give him the details of the weapon to him in the first place, means that she knew at some point or another this would end up having her be killed, in the end by Crocodile for going against him. This was only because Alabasta was the only lead to her goal of finding the real Poneglyph, and had she have found it then at that point, she would feel her goal would be met, and could die afterwards there with no regret. After realizing that what she was looking for in Alabasta was not the real Poneglyph, she believes to have failed here, and now with herself being stabbed, she was rather content on it being the end of her life here. But then we get an idea of her true goal, her true motivation, which was to simply know of a true history of the world. And as she says that, it makes her cry as too many things got in the way of her dream, showing just how much this means to her. To see her like this and cry is both a total shock and just really sad to see. At this point in the arc, and Robin as a character, we haven't seen this side of her. Sure, she's emoted here and there, but nothing to this extent like in this scene here. Before we even know of her character fully, we can tell already something really awful and traumatic has gone on in her past to feel this way and to feel so broken. When she says she has no reason to live when Luffy picks her up is a theme with Robin that is further explored come Eddie's lobby. As the flashback ends, we then hear her say that back then he forced her to live when she wished to die. That is his crime. She has no place to go or return to, and asks again if she can let him stay on his ship. He then allows her to stay on the ship as the rest of the crew freaks out over it. He tells them not to worry as she's not a bad person. Luffy is right that she's not a bad person, because she did save his life twice, and it's likely why he allows her to be a part of the crew. This does paint a picture of how Robin views herself, as she just sees herself being this kind of burden on people, and even if someone does something noble like saving her life, she sees it as a crime. It's just really sad to see her think of herself like that. Later on, we see Usopp trying to conduct an interview with her, but we then see her playfully using her powers on Luffy and Chopper. Both are laughing and having a good time as she smiles at them. Chopper looks at her and then gets scared of her and then hides behind Luffy's back. Usopp tells her to look at him when he's talking to her. He wants her to answer all of his questions truthfully. He asks for her full name, but then he changes his stern tone to a more polite tone of voice, as he then first gives her his name, then says pleased to meet her. She tells him her name, and Usopp asks the question of what's her occupation. She tells him that she's an archaeologist, and that she comes from a long line of them. When she became one of them, she then became wanted by the world government at the age of 8. For the past 20 years, she kept herself hidden from society. He questions if she was alone that entire time. She says not exactly, as a child can't survive on the ocean by herself. Over the years, she worked with various villainous characters as a way of protecting herself, and achieving her goal, and that's her story. He asks her, would you say Crocodile was just one of those people? She says she would, in order to locate the real Poneglyph. It's given her a lot of experiences in covert operations. She would be an asset to them. He says that she seems confident in herself, and asks what's her specialty. She says assassination. Usopp then gives up on the interview as she's too dangerous to hire. Robin continues to use her powers to tickle Chopper and Luffy, as Usopp says to listen to what he's saying. Before I go on, I want to mention a few things. During her interview with Usopp, we learn how she survived all those years since she was 8, but do notice how she's not giving out too much of herself right away. She's keeping it simple and vague, especially why and what the government is after her for. But one thing she mentioned is that her specialty is assassination. To this day, and after nearly 20 years since this arc was done, we've seen none of this to support what she said here. It could be possible that she made up as a way to scare Usopp to end the conversation early. She likely is aware of him being a coward and a wimp at times, just based on what she saw of him when he was trapped in a cage earlier in the arc. As well with her reaction to it, kinda tells us everything, like she knew he would react that way. That's really my only theory on that, cause in Alabasta we don't see her assassinating anyone. In fact, she does the opposite. She could have easily killed Pell and Tashi, but she chose not to. Nami is still skeptical of her as she calls Usopp and them pathetic, and look how easily you all let her walk all over you. She was the vice president of an enormous criminal organization until this very day. Give her one good reason why she should let her join them. She may have fooled those idiots, but it won't work on her. If she ever tries anything, she's kicking her out. Robin says that she'll keep it in mind. But by the way, she brought along some of Crocodile's jewels. This instantly brings Nami to liking her, as she loves things like that. As she was talking to her about all that, Robin smiles, likely knowing that she's well aware of Nami's love for jewelry and treasure-like items. Usopp says Nami's down, while Zoro says that was dirty, implying further that Robin was aware of what it would take for Nami to like her. Sanji makes her a snack to eat and easily falls in love with her, so he's on her side as well. As he gives her food, she just thanks him and nothing more. It doesn't seem like it bothers her one way or another if he acts all romantic towards her. That only leaves Zoro and Usopp against her now. Usopp says that those weak-minded fools have failed them all. Luffy gets Usopp's attention, and Robin has made him look like Chopper with the hands as antlers. He loses it and laughs along and joins Luffy on the fun. That only leaves Zoro as the only one skeptical of her. Something to take note is how Luffy is completely fine with her using her powers to grow hands on top of his hat, something that he values a lot. Now compare that to earlier in Whiskey Peak, how when she took his hat, he was visibly angry about it. Subtle things like that I love, and it does show how much he values her. Sanji can't figure out what to call Robin as she gets up, looks at him, and then smiles as she walks off, which was a nice way of showing she may in fact not mind Sanji's antics after all. As she walks up to the top of the ship where Zoro's at, she walks past him and he doesn't say anything. Robin is the one who talks first and says that this is a nice ship, and asks, is it always as lively as this? He says, yep, this is it. She says, oh, with a big smile on her face. Zoro thinks to himself, this woman, what is she plotting? Again, still thinking that she still has some bad intent planned. She looks out to the sea and continues to smile, clearly enjoying the atmosphere this crew has already. Since she joined so many villainous crews over the years, I'm certain this one that she's on now has a completely different vibe to her. The rest of the crew, besides Sanji and Luffy, are understandably not on board with the idea of her joining the crew, but all of them were won over in one way or another besides Zoro. She calls to Nami, calling her Miss Navigator, and asks if they are on course. Now, Robin not calling people by their actual names on the crew is a thing with her for a while here. The only name she said fully is Luffy's name, twice. And it says to her and to us how much respect she has for him in some way or another, just enough to, call them by their actual name. But with Nami, she doesn't really care to say it. My critique at the time was how on earth is she wanting to be a part of this crew? It just felt so sudden. It felt like it just came out of nowhere. I was more rooting for Vivi to be part of the Straw Hat crew, but then Oda just flips the script on us. It doesn't help either that the opening spoils her joining the crew at episode 116. 14 episodes before she officially joins. Why couldn't they just wait until episode 131? At least manga readers at the time didn't have to worry about that. I would imagine manga and anime watchers at the time being upset and confused by this. The anime staff must have thought the same way too, because in between Alabasta and next arc Jaya, in the manga she just joins the crew and then the next arc happens immediately after. The anime does add some filler to give her more time and interactions with the crew, and between Alabasta and Jai, it's about like 14 episodes. Not every episode is like focused on Robin. We do get some scenes here and there where she kind of interacts with Chopper and stuff, but again, it's not canon. And this is finally where the Alabasta arc ends. Just my final thoughts as I'm just going off script here. There's so much to Robin in this arc in terms of just foreshadowing future events, mentioning just her subtle character nuances and touches with her. There's just every bit of dialogue with her is so carefully crafted to continue to build up her character while also foreshadowing events for the future, and it's so well done. It's just every bit of dialogue I had to take into account and really, really think about, and it was so time consuming to get to this point and everything. And I really wanted to kind of make sure I get everything I possibly could. Like 80-90% of the script was already redone just to get to this point. And it was so just intense to work on. I know the next two arcs of Jai and Skypiea aren't nearly as heavily character dense, focused on Robin in particular, but those two arcs are very important in this one way of expanding her relationship and everything with the crew and further building that bond. That's where we're going to finally conclude this part, and I just want to thank everybody for watching. I gotta give a big thanks to my fans, subscribers for watching all of this, and I really appreciate it because this is a big passion project. It means a lot to me, and hopefully you'll continue to stick around and watch the other parts as well when they come out. But for me, that's where we're going to end this video, so thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later, and I'll see you all in the next part of this kinda long series. Have a good day, everyone.